The transit hall of Waypoint 17 was always crowded. Hundreds of travelers moved through the massive space every hour. They came from dozens of worlds and spoke dozens of languages. They carried bags and boxes and children on their shoulders. They laughed and argued and called out to friends across the wide floor. But around one small figure, there was only silence. Sat in the middle of a long row of seats. The seats to her left were empty. The seats to her right were empty. The seats in front of her and behind her were empty too. It was like someone had drawn an invisible circle around her, and no one dared to step inside. She had been sitting there for 6 hours. Her ship to the outer colonies would not arrive for another 4, 10 hours in this place. 10 hours of watching others look at her and then look away. 10 hours of seeing parents pull their children closer when they walked past. Her people were tall and thin, with skin the color of pale silver and large dark eyes. Once, they had been respected traders and scholars. They had built beautiful cities on their home world. They had created art that other species traveled far to see. Then the plague came. The plague appeared without warning 12 years ago. It spread fast and killed faster. Within 2 years, half of all were dead. The survivors were left with marks on their skin, dark lines that spread across their faces and arms like cracks in old stone. The marks never faded. They never healed. Touched the dark lines on her cheek. She had been only 15 when she got sick. She remembered the fever and the pain. She remembered her mother crying beside her bed. She remembered waking up weeks later, weak but alive, and seeing her reflection for the first time. The plague was gone now. It had burned through the population and then disappeared. Scientists said the survivors were completely healthy. They were not dangerous. They could not spread the sickness to anyone. But the other species did not care about science. They only cared about fear. To the plague marks meant death. They meant bad luck and dark omens. No one wanted to sit near someone who carried such marks. No one wanted to hire them or trade with them or even speak to them. So sat alone, as she had sat alone for 3 years. She watched a family settle into seats across the hall. The mother noticed and quickly guided her children to face the other direction. A merchant walked toward the empty seats near, then stopped suddenly when he saw her. He turned and walked away without a word. Did not react. She had learned not to react. Reactions only made things worse. If she showed anger, they called her dangerous. If she showed sadness, they said she was seeking pity. If she showed nothing at all, they ignored her, and that was the best she could hope for. A group of young passed by, talking loudly among themselves. One of them pointed at and said something in a language she did not understand. The others laughed, kept her eyes on the floor and waited for them to move on. She had nowhere to go. That was the truth she had accepted long ago. No colony would give her work. No ship captain would hire her. She had spent the last of her savings on this ticket to the outer regions, where she hoped the smaller settlements might be more desperate for workers, desperate enough to overlook her marks. It was a small hope, but it was all she had left. The announcement system crackled to life. A calm voice spoke in the common trade language that everyone on the station understood. Attention travelers. Human cargo vessel has completed docking at Bay 14. Human cargo vessel at Bay 14. Glanced up briefly. Humans were new to the galactic community. They had only made contact with other species about 30 years ago. Their ships were small and simple compared to the great vessels of the older races. They mostly carried cargo and kept to themselves. Had seen humans before, but she had never spoken to one. There was no reason to. Humans had their own problems, their own struggles to prove themselves worthy to the Galactic Council. They would not want anything to do with a plague marked. She looked back down at her hands, tracing the dark lines that ran across her fingers. Her mother used to tell her that she had beautiful hands. That was before the plague, before everything changed. The transit hall continued its busy dance around her. Species mixed and mingled, making deals and sharing stories. A child ran past, chasing a small floating toy. Two elders argued about the price of something. A couple held hands and whispered to each other with soft smiles. Life happened everywhere in the hall, just not near. She pulled her thin traveling coat around her shoulders. The station was always cold, or maybe the cold was inside her. She could not remember the last time she had felt truly warm. A new wave of travelers entered the hall from the direction of the docking bays. Did not look up. She had learned that looking up only led to disappointment. Better to keep her eyes down and let the universe flow around her like water around a stone. She heard footsteps approaching, heavy boots on the metal floor. She prepared herself for the footsteps to stop, turn, and walk away. That was what always happened. But these footsteps did not stop. They did not turn. They kept coming closer and closer until they stopped right beside her. Looked up in surprise. A human stood there. He was not tall by human standards, with black hair cut short and tired eyes that suggested a long journey. He wore the simple gray uniform of a cargo pilot, with patches on his shoulders that did not recognize. He looked at the empty seat beside her, then he looked at the seat again. And then, without a word, he sat down. Stopped breathing. Her mind went blank. She waited for him to realize his mistake. She waited for him to see her marks and jump up in horror. She waited for the universe to correct this impossible error. The human reached into his bag and pulled out a small wrapped package. He opened it to reveal some kind of food bar. He took a bite and chewed slowly, looking out at the crowded hall with a tired but peaceful expression. He did not move. He did not leave. He just sat there, eating his food as if there was nothing strange about what he had done. Around them, the transit hall had gone quiet. Hundreds of aliens stared at the human who had broken the unspoken rule. Some pointed, some whispered. A merchant dropped his drink and the cup clattered loudly on the floor. The human noticed the silence. He looked around with a confused expression, as if he did not understand why everyone was staring. Then he shrugged slightly and went back to eating. Realized she was still not breathing. She forced herself to take a breath, then another. Her heart was beating so fast she could feel it in her throat. The human glanced at her and offered a small, friendly smile. "Long wait?" he asked in simple trade language. Opened her mouth, but no words came out. She had not spoken to anyone in weeks. Her voice felt like a rusty door that had been closed for too long. The human did not seem bothered by her silence. He just nodded understandingly and took another bite of his food bar. "Same," he said. "These layovers are the worst." Stared at him. She stared at this strange human who had sat beside her like it was nothing, like she was nothing special, like she was just another traveler waiting for a ship. In 3 years, no one had treated her like that. No one had looked at her and seen just a person. She felt something wet on her cheek and realized she was crying. The human noticed. His expression shifted to gentle concern, but he did not make a big scene about it. He simply held out the remainder of his food bar toward her. "Hungry?" he asked. It was such a simple question, such a small act of kindness. But too, it felt like the first light of dawn after the longest night of her life. She reached out with a trembling hand and took the offered food. And in the corner of her eye, she saw a station security officer beginning to walk toward them. The human's name was Ho. He had told her this with the same casual friendliness he seemed to show in everything he did. Like sharing his name with a plague-marked stranger was the most natural thing in the world. Held the food bar he had given her. She had taken one small bite. It was dry and tasted like grain and something sweet she could not identify. It was the best thing she had eaten in months. "What is your name?" Ho asked. He had turned slightly in his seat to face her better. His tired eyes held genuine curiosity, not the suspicious fear she was used to seeing. Tried to speak. Her voice came out as a rough whisper. Ho smiled warmly. That is a nice name, it is easy to say. She did not know how to respond to that. Compliments had become foreign things to her, like words from a language she had forgotten how to speak. Around them, the transit hall was still unnaturally quiet. Hundreds of eyes watched the strange scene of a human sitting beside the marked. Whispers spread through the crowd like ripples in water. Could feel the weight of all that attention pressing down on her. But Ho seemed completely unaware of it, or perhaps he simply did not care. "Where are you traveling?" he asked, taking out a small water container and drinking from it. Swallowed the dry lump in her throat. "The outer colonies. I am looking for work." "Ah, the outer colonies," Ho nodded thoughtfully. "I have made deliveries there. Good people mostly, hard workers. What kind of work do you do?" Before could answer, a shadow fell over them both. She looked up and felt her stomach drop. Commander stood before them. He was tall and broad, with the gray-green skin and small, sharp eyes of his species. Two security officers flanked him, their hands resting on the weapons at their belts. Was the station commander. He was known for keeping order on Waypoint 17. He was also known for his strict following of social rules, even the unwritten ones that everyone understood but no one spoke aloud. "Human," said, his voice was deep and cold. "You need to move." Ho looked up at the commander with a calm expression. He did not seem frightened or even surprised. "Is there a problem with this seat?" "Not with the seat." Eyes moved too. The disgust on his face was clear. "With your choice of where to sit." Started to stand. She had been through this before. It was easier to just leave, to find another corner where she could wait alone. Fighting only made things worse. But Ho held up a hand gently. "Wait, please." She froze, half standing. No one had ever asked her to wait. No one had ever wanted her to stay. Ho turned back to Commander. His voice remained polite but firm. "I do not understand. I saw an empty seat and I sat down. Is that against station rules?" Made an annoyed sound. "You are new to galactic travel, so I will explain. That female is plague-marked. Do you understand what that means?" "I can see she has scars," Ho said simply. "Many people have scars." "These are not ordinary scars," spoke slowly like he was explaining something to a child. "She carries the marks of the plague. It is not acceptable to sit beside such a person. It brings bad luck. It shows poor judgment. Other species will avoid you now." Ho was quiet for a moment. He seemed to be thinking carefully about the commander's words. Then he asked a single question. "Is she contagious?" "Blink to what?" "The plague, can she spread it to others? Is she sick?" The commander shifted uncomfortably. "No, the plague ended years ago. She is not contagious, but that is not the point. The marks remain. The stigma remains. It is how things are done." Ho nodded slowly. "So she is healthy. She cannot harm anyone. She just has scars from a sickness she survived." "You are not listening," said, his voice growing harder. "This is not about health. This is about social order, about respect for proper behavior. If you continue to sit there, other species will think humans accept plague-marked individuals. They will think less of your kind." Watched this exchange with growing amazement. She had never seen anyone question the rules before. Everyone simply accepted that plague-marked were to be avoided. It was just how the galaxy worked. But this human did not seem to accept it at all. Ho really looked at her. She saw no fear in his eyes, no disgust, only a quiet thoughtfulness. Then he turned back to Commander. "Where I come from," Ho said, "we do not abandon people for having scars. We do not punish people for surviving." His face darkened. "This is not your world, human. This is the galactic community. We have traditions. We have standards." "I understand." Ho's voice remained calm. "And I choose not to follow traditions that hurt innocent people." The security officer stepped forward, but raised a hand to stop them. His eyes narrowed as he studied the human. "You are making a mistake," said. "Once word spreads that you sat with a plague marked, no reputable trader will work with you. Your cargo contracts will disappear. Your fellow humans may not even welcome you back." Ho shrugged. "Then they can avoid me too." He said it so simply, so easily, like throwing away his social standing was nothing compared to the simple act of treating another person with kindness. Felt tears rising again. She blinked them back, but a few escaped down her cheeks. The dark plague lines on her face glistened wet. Stared at Ho for a long moment. Then he shook his head with something like disbelief. "Humans," he muttered, "I will never understand your species." He turned and walked away. The security officers followed, casting confused looks back at the human who had refused to move. The transit hall slowly returned to its normal noise. Aliens went back to their conversations, though many still stole glances at Ho, and the whispers continued, but they had lost some of their sharp edges. Ho let out a long breath. "That was interesting." He turned to with a small smile. "Are you okay?" Could not speak. She was crying freely now, 3 years of loneliness and pain breaking through the walls she had built around her heart. She covered her face with her hands, ashamed of her weakness. Ho did not try to comfort her with empty words. He simply sat quietly beside her, a warm presence in the cold station. He waited patiently for her tears to slow. When finally lowered her hands, her voice was shaking. "Why? Why what? Why did you sit here? Why did you not move when they told you to?" Ho considered the question seriously. "I saw an empty seat. I saw a person sitting alone. It seemed like you could use some company. But the rules, the social order, they are right that others will avoid you now." "Maybe," Ho shrugged again. "But I could not look at myself in the mirror if I treated you like they do. Some rules are not worth following." Shook her head slowly. "No one has ever said that before. No one has ever chosen to sit with me." Then everyone else made the wrong choice. Such simple words, such an impossible idea, had spent 3 years believing that she was the problem, that her marks made her unworthy of kindness, that she deserved the loneliness. But this human, this stranger from a young species that barely understood the galaxy, had looked at her and seen something different. He had seen a person. "I do not know what to say," whispered. Ho smiled gently. "You do not have to say anything, just eat your food. You look like you have not had a good meal in a while." Looked down at the food bar still clutched in her hand. She took another bite. The simple taste of it felt like comfort. "You said you are looking for work in the outer colonies," Ho said after a while. "What kind of experience do you have?" Swallowed. "I was trained as a navigator before the plague. I was very good at reading star maps and calculating jump routes." Ho's eyebrows rose with interest. "A navigator, that is a useful skill." He paused, seeming to think about something. "My cargo ship could use a navigator. My current system is old and keeps making mistakes." Stared at him. "You cannot be serious." "I am always serious about my ship." He grinned slightly. "The work is not exciting, mostly long flights between small colonies. The pay is average, but the seat beside me in the cockpit is empty." The offer hung in the air between them. Could not believe what she was hearing. A job, a real job, after 3 years of rejection and silence. She did not know what to say. "You would work with me, even knowing what I am." "I know what you are," Ho said firmly. "You are a navigator who needs work. That is what I see." Before could respond, a new voice called out from across the hall. "Ho, there you are." They both turned to see a human woman walking toward them. She had long dark hair tied back and wore the same gray uniform as Ho, though with different patches on her shoulders. Her face showed relief at finding her friend. But as she got closer, she noticed. She noticed the plague marks. She noticed the empty seats all around them. And she noticed the hostile stares from the surrounding aliens. tensed, waiting for this new human to react like everyone else. The human woman looked at. Her eyes moved across the dark plague marks on his face and arms. She studied them for a moment, her expression unreadable. His heart sank. Here it comes, she thought. Here comes the disgust, the fear, the quick excuse to pull Ho away. But the woman simply smiled and sat down on the other side. I am, she said warmly. I see you have met my friend Ho. I hope he has not talked your ears off. He loves to chat. Could not process what was happening. Two humans now sat beside her. Two humans who showed no fear of her marks. Two humans who acted like this was perfectly normal. I have not talked that much, Ho protested with a small laugh. We only met a little while ago. Looked around at the crowd still staring at them. And you have already made the station uncomfortable. That must be a new record. It was not me, Ho said. I just sat down. They are the ones who made it strange. Found her voice. It came out small and confused. You are not afraid of me. Turned to her with genuine surprise. Afraid? Why would I be afraid? My mark's the plague. Everyone is afraid of plague marked. His expression softened with understanding. Ah, the scars. She leaned a little closer, examining the dark lines on his face with what looked like professional interest. May I ask, are these from the plague that happened about 12 years ago? Nodded, not trusting herself to speak. I read about that outbreak when I was studying medicine, said. It was terrible, so many lives lost, but the survivors, they are completely healthy now, yes. No remaining infection. Yes, the plague is gone, the marks are just what is left behind. Nodded thoughtfully. Scars, evidence that you survived something that tried to kill you, she smiled gently. Where I come from, scars like that are not shameful, they are proof of strength. Blinked proof of strength. Of course. Settled back in her seat, her posture relaxed and open. Humans have survived many plagues throughout our history, terrible sicknesses that killed millions of our people. Those who survived often carried marks on their skin. We do not shun them for it, we respect them. Ho nodded in agreement. My grandmother had scars on her arms from a sickness she caught as a child. She showed them to me when I was young. She said they reminded her that she was stronger than she knew. Listened to these words like someone dying of thirst listens to the sound of water. She had spent 3 years being told that her marks made her cursed, dangerous, unworthy. And now these strangers from a young species were telling her the opposite. I do not understand, she whispered. Other species see my marks and they see death. They see bad luck. How can you see strength? His eyes held deep kindness. Because we have learned that survival is not something to be ashamed of. It is something to be celebrated. She paused. Tell me about the plague if you are willing. What was it like? No one had ever asked that question. Everyone assumed they knew the story. Everyone thought they understood just by looking at her marks, but no one had ever wanted to hear her experience. She swallowed hard. I was 15. The plague came to our city without warning. People started getting sick. Then they started dying. Within a week, half my neighbors were gone. And Ho listened silently. Their attention was complete and focused. I got sick on the 10th day, continued. The fever was so high I could not think. I remember my mother holding me, crying, begging me to stay with her. I remember the pain as the marks formed on my skin, like fire spreading through my blood. Her voice cracked, but she forced herself to continue. She had never told this story to anyone. The words had been locked inside her for so long. I was unconscious for 3 weeks. When I woke up, the plague had passed, but everything was different. My father was dead. My brother was dead. Half my people were dead. And those of us who survived, we had these marks. She touched the dark lines on her cheek. At first, we thought we were lucky. We had survived. But then we learned that the galaxy did not see it that way. Other species looked at us and saw only the plague. They saw death walking among them. They were afraid we would bring the sickness back. But you are not contagious, Ho said. No, The scientists proved that many times, but fear does not listen to science. Fear only sees the marks and remembers the bodies. His hands were shaking. Slowly, everything fell apart. My mother and I lost our home because no one would rent to us. I lost my job because my employer said customers were uncomfortable. Friends stopped speaking to us. Even the ones who did not get sick, they turned away from us. They were afraid that helping us would mark them as outcasts too. She took a shuddering breath. My mother died 2 years ago. She just gave up. She stopped eating. She stopped trying. She said there was no point in living in a galaxy that did not want her. Reached out and gently took his hand. The touch was warm and real and so unexpected that almost pulled away. "I am so sorry," said softly. "No one should have to suffer like that." "After she died, I started traveling," continued. "I thought maybe somewhere in the galaxy there would be a place that would accept me, a colony that needed workers too badly to care about my marks. I have been searching for 3 years. I have not found it yet." Ho's expression was pained. 3 years alone. Yes, alone, looked at the two humans beside her. Until today, until you sat down. The transit hall continued its noise around them. Aliens walked past, still casting curious or hostile looks at the strange group, but inside the small circle of their conversation, there was only warmth. Squeezed hand gently. "On Earth we have a saying, what does not kill you makes you stronger. You survived something terrible, you lost everything, and yet you are still here, still trying, still hopping." "I do not feel strong," admitted. "I feel tired, so tired." "That is what strength looks like sometimes," Ho said. "Not fighting with weapons, just refusing to give up even when everything hurts." Felt tears threatening again. She had cried more in the past hour than she had in the past year. Something about these humans made her feel safe enough to let down her walls. "Ho offered me a job," she said on his cargo ship, as a navigator. His face lit up. "That is wonderful. We have been needing a real navigator for months. The automated system is terrible." "You work on the ship too?" "I am the medical officer," smiled. "It is a small crew, just us and a few others. We deliver supplies to outer colonies. It is not glamorous work, but it is good work." "And you would not mind having me there, even with my marks?" Exchanged a look with Ho. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. Then she turned back to, "The only thing that matters to us is whether you can do the job. Can you read star maps? Can you calculate jump routes?" Nodded slowly. "I was one of the best navigators on before the plague. I have not practiced in 3 years, but I still remember everything." "Then you are exactly what we need." It felt like a dream, a wonderful, impossible dream that was afraid to believe in. At any moment she expected to wake up and find herself alone again, surrounded by empty seats and cold stares. But the warmth of his hand in hers felt real. The kindness in Ho's eyes felt real. For the first time in 3 years, hope felt real. A small movement caught his attention. She looked up and saw a young child standing a few meters away. The child was small, probably no more than 6 or 7 years old by human counting. She had the bright orange skin and big round eyes of her species. The child was staring at with open curiosity, not fear, not disgust, just the pure curiosity of someone too young to have learned hate. Behind the child, her parents noticed where their daughter was looking. The mother's face twisted with alarm. She started to reach for the child to pull her away. But before she could, the child spoke. "Your face has pretty lines," she said "Did someone draw them?" His breath caught. She felt in Ho watching her, waiting to see how she would respond. For a moment she did not know what to say. Then, slowly, she smiled. It was the first real smile she had smiled in longer than she could remember. "Something like that," she said softly. "They are marks from a sickness I had a long time ago." The child tilted her head. "Did the sickness hurt?" "Yes, very much." But you got better. Yes, I got better. The child nodded seriously, accepting this information with the simple logic of the young. Then they are brave marks, like the scar my father has from when he fought a sand beast. The mother finally reached the child and scooped her up quickly. She muttered an apology and hurried away, casting a frightened look at, but barely noticed. She was still hearing the child's words echoing in her mind. Brave marks. She looked at Ho and who were both smiling at her. Children often see things more clearly than adults, said. Touched the marks on her cheek. For the first time, she did not feel shame when she felt them. She felt something else, something she had almost forgotten. She felt like a survivor. And then she noticed another figure approaching. This one moved slowly, hesitantly. An older male with gray-silver skin and marks of his own, though fainter than. She recognized him immediately, and her heart turned to ice. It was the elder who had abandoned her and her mother when they needed help most. Stopped a few meters away from the group. His old eyes were fixed on, filled with something she could not quite read. Shame, perhaps, or regret, or maybe just the discomfort of facing someone he had wronged. Felt her whole body go rigid. The warmth she had found with Ho and suddenly felt fragile, like thin ice that could crack at any moment. Said, his voice was thin and rough with age. I thought it was you. When I saw the human sitting beside someone with marks, I had to come see. You know this person? Ho asked quietly. He had noticed the change in his expression. He is my uncle, said. The word felt bitter on her tongue. My mother's brother. Flinched at the coldness in her voice. I know you are angry. You have every right to be. Angry? Hands were trembling. You left us. When the plague ended and we needed help, you left us. You moved to another city and pretended we did not exist. I was afraid. His voice cracked. Everyone was afraid. The healthy, we did not know how to handle what happened. We did not know if the plague would come back. We did not know if being near the survivors would. Would what make you sick? Turn you into an outcast like us? His voice rose. So you chose to save yourself. You let my mother die of loneliness rather than stand beside her. And Ho exchanged looks. They did not interfere, but they both shifted slightly, positioning themselves as silent support for. Hung his head. The faint plague marks on his own skin seemed to darken with his shame. I survived the plague too. My marks are lighter because I caught a weaker form, but I still have them. I am still marked. Then you know what we suffered. You know exactly what we went through, and you still abandoned us. Yes, did not try to defend himself. I abandoned you. I abandoned my own sister when she needed me most. I told myself it was for the best, that it would only cause more trouble if I stayed. But those were lies I told to make myself feel better. He lifted his eyes to Meet's gaze. There were tears in them. I have regretted it every day since. When I heard your mother passed, I wanted to come to you, but I was too ashamed, too afraid that you would hate me. I do hate you, said, but even as she said the words, she felt some of the anger draining out of her. She was so tired, tired of carrying the weight of the past, tired of holding onto pain. Ho spoke up gently. You do not owe him anything, not your forgiveness, not your time, not even this conversation. Looked at the human who had changed everything by simply sitting down beside her. He was right, she owed nothing, but something in her was shifting. The little girl's words echoed in her mind. Brave marks. Was it brave to hold on to hate, or was it braver to let it go? What do you want? She asked. Her voice was steadier now. Why did you come over here? Seemed surprised by the question. He thought for a long moment before answering. I saw these humans sitting with you. I saw them treating you like a person, like the way we all should have treated the survivors. And I felt so ashamed that strangers from a distant world could do what your own family could not. He took a shaking breath. I do not expect forgiveness. I do not deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I am sorry. I am sorry for every day I was not there, I am sorry that your mother died believing she was alone in this galaxy." "She was not alone," said softly. "I was with her until the end." "I know, and that makes what I did even worse. You were just a child, carrying a burden that should have been shared." The transit hall seemed to fade around them. The noise of the crowd became distant. For a moment, it was just two broken standing in the ruins of their family. Leaned close to his ear. "Whatever you decide, we are here for you." Drew strength from those words. She straightened her spine and looked at directly. "I will not tell you that I forgive you," she said. "Maybe I will one day. Maybe I will not. But I am tired of being angry. I am tired of looking backwards." Nodded slowly. "I understand. These humans," gestured to Ho, "and they showed me something today. They showed me that my marks do not make me cursed. They showed me that survival is not a crime." Ho smiled slightly, nodded in quiet agreement. Took a deep breath. "If you want to make things right, then start with yourself. Stop hiding from your own marks. Stop letting fear control you. Be the person you should have been 12 years ago." Looked down at the faint dark lines on his own hands. For years, he had worn long sleeves to hide them. He had kept his head down. He had tried to be invisible enough that no one would notice his scars. "I do not know if I am strong enough," he admitted. "Neither did I," said. "Until an hour ago, I thought I would spend the rest of my life alone. Then a human sat down beside me and everything changed." She paused. "If you want to change, start by sitting down." She gestured to an empty seat nearby, not directly beside her but close enough to matter. Stared at the seat. His whole body trembled with decades of fear and habit. He had spent so long hiding, so long running from what he was. Could he really just sit down? The transit hall watched. Aliens of all species looked on with curiosity and confusion. A plague-marked elder, standing at a crossroads. Slowly, painfully, moved toward the seat. He lowered himself into it. He sat there beside his niece and the two strange humans who had started all of this. His hands shook. His eyes were wet. But he sat. Felt something release in her chest. A knot she had carried for so long she had forgotten it was there. It did not disappear completely, but it loosened. "Thank you," whispered. Across the hall something was happening. Other ones had not even noticed before were watching. Some of them had marks too, faded or hidden under clothing. They had been traveling alone, sitting apart, keeping their distance. But now they saw sitting with the marked woman and the humans. They saw him taking a seat instead of standing apart. One of them, a middle-aged female with marks across her neck, stood up from her isolated corner. She walked slowly, hesitantly, toward the group. She did not say anything. She just took a seat nearby, close enough to be counted. Then another. Then another. Watched in amazement as 6 more plague-marked gathered around them. Not touching, not speaking, but present. For the first time they were not hiding. They were not alone. His eyes glistened. "Look what you started," she said to Ho. "I just sat down," Ho said quietly. "They did the rest." But shook her head. "No, you did not just sit down. You saw me when everyone else looked away. You gave me courage when I had none left. You reminded me that I am not cursed. I am a survivor." She looked at the small gathering of marked around her. "We are all survivors." The announcement system crackled to life. The calm voice spoke. "Attention travelers. Transport to outer colonies now boarding at Bay 22. Transport to outer colonies, Bay 22." Stood up, her legs felt stronger than they had in years. She turned to Ho. "That is my ship," she said, then she paused. "Or is it?" Ho stood too. "That is the public transport, but my cargo ship leaves in 2 hours from Bay 14. There is a seat in the cockpit with your name on it if you want it." The choice was clear. Could take the public transport to the outer colonies, continue her lonely search for a place that might accept her. Or she could trust these humans who had shown her more kindness in 1 hour than she had received in 3 years. It was not really a choice at all. "I would like to see this ship of yours," said. Ho grinned, clapped her hands together happily, rose from his seat and approached. He did not try to touch her or embrace her. He just stood before her, old and tired and broken, but somehow standing a little than before. "Go," he said, "find your place among the stars, and know that I will try to be better. I will try to be worthy of being your uncle again." Studied his face. The same silver features she remembered from childhood, now lined with age and grief. He had hurt her deeply, but holding onto that hurt was holding her back. "Goodbye," she said. "Take care of yourself." She turned and walked toward Bay 14, with Ho on her left and on her right. Behind her, she heard the voices of the other plague-marked, speaking quietly to each other, finding connection after years of isolation. The invisible circle that had surrounded her for so long was finally breaking. The cargo ship was called the Steady Wing. It was not a beautiful ship. The metal hull was scratched and dented from years of hard work. The paint had faded under countless stars. Some of the lights flickered when you walked past them. But too, it was the most wonderful thing she had ever seen. Ho led her through the narrow corridors, pointing out different sections of the ship. Here was the small cargo hold where they stored supplies. Here was the tiny kitchen where they shared meals. Here was the medical bay where worked. "It is not much," Ho admitted, "but it is home." Home? The word felt strange too. She had not had a home in 3 years. She had lived in station corners and cheap hostels and once, for 2 terrible weeks, in an abandoned cargo container on a mining colony. Now she was being offered a place to belong. The cockpit was at the front of the ship. It was small, with 2 worn seats facing a wide window that looked out at the stars. Control panels covered every available surface, their lights blinking softly in the dim space. Ho gestured to the seat on the right. "That one is yours. The navigation controls are all on that side. I handle flying and cargo management from the left." Approached the seat slowly. She ran her fingers over the worn armrest, feeling the smooth places where countless hours of use had polished the material. Someone had sat here before her. Someone had made this seat their own. "What happened to your last navigator?" she asked. "He retired about 8 months ago. Said he was too old for cargo runs and wanted to settle on a quiet moon somewhere." Ho smiled at the memory. "He was a good man. Told terrible jokes, but his star charts were always perfect." Lowered herself into the seat. It fit her surprisingly well, as if it had been waiting for someone her size all along. Through the window, she could see the vast docking bay of Waypoint 17. Other ships came and went, their lights blinking in the darkness. "How does it feel?" asked from the doorway. "Strange," admitted. "Good but strange. I keep waiting to wake up." Walked over and put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "This is real. You are really here. You are really part of our crew now." Looked up at the human woman. "You barely know me. Why are you trusting me with something so important?" Exchanged a look with Ho. Some kind of silent conversation passed between them. "Because trust has to start somewhere," said. "And because we believe in giving people chances. It is something humans learned a long time ago." "Tell me more about humans," said. "I know so little about your species. You only joined the galactic community 30 years ago." Ho settled into the pilot's seat beside her. "What do you want to know?" "Everything," turned to face him. "How do you see things so differently? How can you look at my marks and not feel fear?" Ho thought for a moment. "Humans have a complicated history. We spent most of it fighting each other, actually. Wars and conflicts and terrible things." "That does not sound very different from other species." "No, I suppose not." Ho smiled sadly. "But somewhere along the way, some of us started learning. We learned that fear of differences only leads to more suffering. We learned that the people we thought were our enemies were often just people with their own stories and their own pain." Sat down on a small fold-out seat near the door. Humans have survived a lot. Plagues that killed millions, wars that burned our cities, natural disasters that destroyed everything we built. Every time, we had to choose whether to turn on each other or help each other. And you chose to help each other. Not always, admitted honestly. Sometimes we made the wrong choice. Sometimes fear won. But over time, enough of us chose kindness that it started to become part of who we are. Considered this. So when Ho sat beside me, he was acting on instinct, on something that is part of being human. Ho shrugged. I was acting on what felt right. When I saw you sitting alone, surrounded by empty seats, I felt something in my chest, a pulling feeling like I was supposed to do something. What kind of feeling? I do not know the right word for it. Ho frowned, thinking. It is like seeing a wrong thing and wanting to make it right. Like when you see a child crying and you want to help them. Some people call it compassion. Some call it empathy. I just call it being human. Touched the marks on her face. We used to believe in community above all. We would never have abandoned sick people before the plague. But when the sickness came, everything changed. Fear destroyed what we had built. Fear is powerful, agreed. It can make good people do terrible things, but it can be overcome. You saw it today in the transit hall. Your uncle sat down, other came closer. Fear was losing its grip. Because of you, because you showed them a different way. Ho shook his head. We only reminded them of what they already knew. Deep down, most people want to be kind. They just need permission. They need to see that it is possible. The ship systems hummed softly around them. In an hour, they would leave this station and head out into the vastness of space. Would begin a new chapter of her life, one she never thought possible. May I ask you something? She said quietly. Of course. In the transit hall, when you first sat beside me, did you really not know about the social rules, about plague-marked people being avoided? Ho was quiet for a moment. His eyes moved to the stars outside the window. I knew something was wrong. I could see that everyone was avoiding you. I could feel the tension in the air. Then why did you sit? Because the rules were wrong. He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I looked at you and I saw a person. I saw someone who needed kindness. Whatever rules said I should stay away, they were not rules worth following. Felt tears rising again. She thought she had cried herself empty in the transit hall, but apparently there was more left. We are taught to follow tradition without question. The elders decide what is proper and we obey. That is how we survived for thousands of years. Traditions can be good, said gently, but they can also become prisons. When tradition says to abandon sick people, then tradition needs to change. Humans change their traditions. We are still changing them. Every generation learns from the last and tries to do better. We make mistakes, but we keep trying. Looked at the two humans who had transformed her world in a single afternoon. They were not gods or saviors. They were just people. People who had chosen to act on their beliefs instead of hiding behind rules. I want to be like that, she said. I want to choose kindness even when it is hard. Ho smiled warmly. You already have. You forgave your uncle. You gave him a chance to do better. That was not easy. I did not forgive him, not completely. But you gave him hope. Sometimes that is enough to start. The ship's communication system beeped. Ho reached over and pressed a button. A voice spoke in trade language, announcing that they were cleared for departure in 30 minutes. Time to get ready, Ho said. He looked at. Are you sure about this? Once we leave, it is a long journey to the first colony. You can still change your mind. Took a deep breath. She looked around the cockpit, at the worn seats and blinking lights and endless stars. She thought about the empty seats in the transit hall. She thought about 3 years of loneliness. She thought about the child who called her Mark's brave. She thought about a human who sat down softly beside her and changed everything. I am sure, she said. Ho's smile widened. Then welcome aboard, navigator. Let us go see the stars. Began preparing for departure, checking medical supplies and securing loose equipment. Ho started the pre-flight sequence, his hands moving confidently over the controls, and sat in her new seat, pulling up navigation charts on the screen before her. The star maps glowed with familiar patterns. Despite 3 years without practice, her hands remembered what to do. She began calculating their route to the outer colonies, finding the safest paths through asteroid fields and around gravity wells. "Your route looks good," Ho said, checking her work. "You really were one of the best, were you not?" "I was," said, and for the first time she did not say it with bitterness or loss. She said it with quiet pride. The steady wing lifted off from the docking bay. Through the wide window, watched waypoint 17 grow smaller and smaller. Somewhere down there, her uncle was beginning his own journey toward becoming a better person. Somewhere down there, other plague-marked were finding each other, breaking free from isolation. And somewhere among the stars ahead, there was a future waiting for her, a future she had stopped believing in. Ho glanced over at her. "You know, I never asked. What made you smile when that little girl called your marks brave?" Thought about the question. Because she saw something that took me 3 years to understand. These marks are not curses. They are not punishments. They are proof that I survived, that I kept going when everything told me to give up. "Brave marks," said softly from behind them. "Yes," touched the dark lines on her cheek. "Brave marks." The ship jumped to faster-than-light speed. Stars stretched into lines of light and then settled into a new pattern. They were on their way. In the cockpit of the steady wing, 2 seats sat side by side. One held a human pilot who believed in kindness over tradition. The other held a navigator who had learned that survival was something to be celebrated. Neither seat was empty. And somewhere in the vast galaxy, word began to spread. Stories about humans who sat beside outcasts. Stories about a species that did not understand that some people should be avoided. Stories about the strange newcomers who chose compassion over fear. It was just one small ship, one small crew, one small act of sitting down. But like ripples in water, it spread outward, into ports and stations, into whispered conversations, into the hearts of those who had forgotten that kindness was possible. One seat at a time, the galaxy was changing. And it all started because a tired cargo pilot saw an empty space and decided to fill it.